The Mark in the City, New York. Late autumn. The asphalt was wet, the wind piercing, whistling between the corners of tall buildings. In a narrow street in the southern part of Manhattan, a group of teenage boys stood near an old building. Their faces were tough, their eyes determined. These boys were part of a small street crew called the Bronx Street Boyz. Leading them was 17-year-old Tyrell. There was something hidden in his eyes. He rarely spoke, but when he did, the others listened. For weeks, Tyrell's crew had been in silent conflict with another gang from the east side called the Ghosts. The two groups were separated by turf lines that were constantly being crossed. And tonight, the tension had reached its peak. Rumor had it that earlier that day, members of the Ghosts had jumped Tyrell's younger brother, leaving him bruised and bleeding. Tyrell stood silently among his crew, then finally spoke. Tonight, behind the old station, show them whose side they're on. We didn't come for peace. That night, at 10:12 p.m., both groups gathered in the shadows behind the rundown station, a place far from city lights and police patrols. Tyrell stood at the front, hood over his head, eyes burning. Across from him stood Jason, 18, the leader of the Ghosts, a boy who had already seen the inside of a juvenile detention center and had returned to the streets with a vengeance. "You guys stepped to us first," Jason growled. "We just taught him a lesson." "A lesson?" Tyrell said coldly. "The real lesson starts now." And with that, silence shattered. Words turned to fists, fists turned to chaos. Steel pipes clanged, shoes thudded against the pavement, someone screamed. Every boy fought like this was his rite of passage, his proof of strength, his identity. From nearby apartment windows, residents peered out. Some called the police. Others shut their curtains and turned away. Sirens echoed. Flashing red and blue lights broke through the night. As cops closed in, most of the boys scattered. But Tyrell and Jason stayed, blood trickling from cuts, clothes torn, but standing tall. "This ain't over," Jason said through gritted teeth. "I know," Tyrell replied. "But someday, it won't be about us. It'll be about this city." They were both arrested. By morning, the local news ran the headline. "Youth street fight. 2 gangs clash, 7 detained." But for the city, it was just another invisible war. One that played out on every corner where young boys fought not just each other, but the silence, the poverty, the absence of a future. Forgotten voices. The next morning, Tyrell and Jason sat in separate rooms at the police station. Their hands were cuffed, their faces bruised from the night before. But the heaviest pain wasn't physical. It was what waited for them outside these walls. "Name?" Officer Randall asked Tyrell, staring him down. "Tyrell Banks." "Do you go to school?" "Sometimes. Sometimes isn't enough." "What happened last night?" "I defended myself." The officer sighed. He had heard this line too many times before. Boys like this came in tough and walked out tougher, until they didn't walk out at all. After several hours, both boys were released. There wasn't enough evidence to press serious charges. No weapons had been recovered, just fists and fury. Tyrell returned home. His mother was waiting at the door. "What's happening to you, my son?" she asked, her voice cracking. "They came after me, Ma. I couldn't just let it slide." She pulled him into a hug, whispering, "But I need you. I already lost your older brother. I can't lose you too." Her words pierced Tyrell's heart. For a brief moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in weeks, calm. But outside, the world hadn't changed. His friends, Leon, Mickey, and Ray, were already gathering near the old station, ready to plan the next move. "We can't back down now," said Leon. "If we stay quiet, they'll walk all over us." "What about Tyrell?" Mickey asked. "He's changing," Ray said. "But we don't get that luxury." At the same time, Jason was released and regrouped with the Ghosts. They, too, were planning retaliation. The streets weren't done talking. But across the city, at a local high school, a new program was quietly starting. A social worker named Laura Myers had launched The Second Path, a project aimed at helping gang-involved youth find a new direction. She wanted to offer them something they hadn't seen before, a way out. Tyrell was called in by the school principal and asked to meet Laura. "Tyrell, it's clear you're a leader," Laura told him. "But don't become someone else's story. Let's find a better path together." Tyrell didn't answer. But inside, For the first time, he wasn't sure which direction he would choose. The turning point. Tyrell sat alone in his room that night, the city lights casting shadows across his wall. From outside, the sounds of sirens, honking cars, and distant voices blended into the familiar noise he had grown up with. He looked down at his bruised knuckles, then at the folded paper Laura Myers had given him earlier, a flyer for the second path. Weekly meetups. Real talk. Real chances. He could still hear her voice in his head. You've got leadership in you, Tyrell, but you have to decide whether to lead toward destruction or something greater. The silence was broken by a sharp knock on the front door. His mother opened it, and Tyrell could hear familiar voices, Leon, Mickey, and Ray. His crew. Tyrell stepped out of his room, standing tall, hiding the uncertainty behind his eyes. Yo T, Leon said. We ready for round 2. Word is Jason's crew is claiming Lincoln Park now. You in? Mickey added. This is the kind of thing you don't let slide, man. You're our guy. Tyrell looked at them. His boys. The ones who'd been with him through cold nights, school fights, and even hunger. But now he saw something else. Fear hiding behind their tough talk. None of them really wanted this fight. They just didn't know anything else. He took a breath. I'm not going, he said. Silence. What? Ray asked, blinking. I'm out. I've been thinking there's another way. I met someone. A program. It's not weak. It's smarter. Stronger. Leon stepped forward, tense. So he's gonna walk away? Just like that. Tyrell held his ground. If I don't, I'll end up like Darnell. Or Marcus. Or worse. The names hit hard. Darnell was serving time upstate. Marcus had been stabbed in a back alley fight a year ago. Everyone went quiet. You can come with me, Tyrell said. All of you. Just check it out. One meeting. What do you have to lose? Ray rubbed the back of his neck. Mickey looked at Leon. But Leon's pride was bigger than his fear. You do you, Leon muttered. But I ain't running. The three turned and walked out, slamming the door behind them. Tyrell stood still, heart pounding. But deep inside, he knew he had just made the hardest and most important decision of his life. The next morning, Tyrell showed up at the community center where the Second Path program met. The room was small but warm. Posters of young people succeeding, college acceptances, job training, mentorships. Laura was there, smiling gently when she saw him walk in. Glad you made it, she said. I almost didn't, Tyrell replied. But I need a new playbook. I'm tired of surviving. I want to start living. She nodded. Let's get to work. As the door closed behind him, Tyrell stepped into a room filled with other young men and women, many with the same look he had in his eyes. Lost, tired, but still hoping. Outside, the city kept moving. The streets didn't stop. But somewhere inside a small room on 145th Street, a new fight had begun. Not for turf, but for a future. Echoes of the street. 2 days passed. Tyrell was still going to the Second Path meetings. Every time he stepped into that small room, the tension in his chest loosened just a little more. They weren't just talking about staying out of trouble. They were planning resumes, learning job skills, even writing spoken word poetry. For the first time, Tyrell wasn't just seen as a street kid or a problem. He was seen as potential. But while he was inside, the streets hadn't forgotten. Word spread fast that Tyrell had stepped away. Not just left the crew, but was working with outsiders. Some even said he was snitching, even though he wasn't. And worse, Jason had heard. At Lincoln Park that night, Jason lit a cigarette under the burnout street lamp and spoke to his boys. Tyrell's out, he said, smoke curling into the cold air. That makes him a question mark. And question marks, they turn into threats. You want us to jump him? One of them asked. Jason didn't answer immediately. He just stared ahead, calculating. No, not yet. Let's see who follows him. Let's see how many hearts he really changed. Meanwhile, Leon was restless. He and Mickey had been walking the block, trying to act like nothing changed, but everything had. Without Tyrell, the group was unsteady. Their leader, their anchor, was gone. And Leon felt it. That evening, Leon stood outside Tyrell's apartment building, kicking at the curb, debating whether to go up or walk away. Tyrell saw him through the window. He hesitated, then opened the door. Thought you said you weren't coming around, Tyrell said. arms crossed. Leon shrugged, not meeting his eyes. You know this thing you're doing, that program? It ain't for me, he said. But I can't sleep. Things feel off without you. Tyrell stepped aside and let him in. You don't have to sign your life away, Tyrell said. Just come to one meeting. Listen, you don't even got to talk. Leon sat down on the couch, thinking, you really believe this changes anything? No, Tyrell said. I know it does. The next afternoon, Leon showed up with Tyrell to the center. Laura smiled. She knew what it meant to gain one more soul off the corner. Everyone mattered. But across town, Jason was watching. He now saw not just one defector, but two. And Jason didn't like momentum when it wasn't his. That night, a brick smashed the front window of the community center. A note was taped to it in permanent marker. Rats get trapped. Tyrell stood in front of the broken glass with his jaw clenched. Leon came up beside him. They're watching, Leon whispered. Tyrell nodded. Then let them. I'm not hiding anymore. But inside, he knew a bigger war was coming. Not one fought with fists or bats, but one between two visions of what it meant to be a man in their world. Fire in the shadows. 2 days after the brick shattered the window, the Second Path Community Center was still boarded up. The glass had been swept, the note thrown out, but the message lingered like a shadow in the corners of everyone's mind. Tyrell walked in that morning to find Laura in a heated conversation with a man in a dark blue blazer. He stood tall, clean-shaven, with city credentials clipped to his belt. As Tyrell entered, both turned. Tyrell, this is Deputy Inspector Curtis, Laura said. He's part of the city's outreach and gang suppression task force. The man gave a tight smile. I've heard your name. You're stepping away from the Bronx Street Boys got our attention. Tyrell stiffened. I'm not flipping. I'm not giving names. Not what I'm here for, Curtis replied. We're not asking for that. But the truth is, once you walk out of a crew like that, especially a crew with enemies, your face becomes a target. Laura added gently, he's not wrong, Tyrell. You've started something powerful. But now we have to protect you and everyone around you. Tyrell shook his head. If I walk with a badge behind me, I lose everything I've built. And if you walk alone, Curtis said, you might lose your life. Outside, trouble was brewing. Jason wasn't just angry. He was humiliated. 2 of the toughest guys he'd ever squared up with were now sitting in rooms reading poetry and talking about futures. Worse, younger kids on the block were starting to watch Tyrell's moves, whispering his name like it meant something new. So Jason made a call. He reached out to a crew in Queens, the Lockjaw Syndicate, a group known for their merciless retaliation jobs. Their message was clear. For a fee, they'd send a warning that no one in the city would ignore. That same afternoon, Leon was walking out of the center with a new notebook in his hand when he spotted a familiar face standing across the street. Mickey, eyes cold, leaning against a car. Yo, Leon called. You good? Mickey crossed the street slowly. What you doing, man? He said quietly. I've been hearing things. Jason says you're helping Tyrell build something soft. A fake kingdom. Leon laughed once, bitterly. You ever think maybe soft is stronger than stupid? Mickey's hand twitched toward his belt. You better back off, man. Jason's not playing anymore. He's got real fire coming. Leon's heart sank. He knew that tone. This wasn't posturing anymore. This was a threat. That night, Tyrell got a call from his mom. Someone was outside the building, wearing all black, just standing there. Then they drove off. Tyrell's blood ran cold. He went to Laura. They're coming. This isn't just some stupid street beef anymore. Jason's bringing outsiders in. Real hitters. Laura's face paled. She turned and began dialing numbers. We have to lock this place down. Call everyone. No one walks alone anymore. Tyrell looked out the window into the night. The streetlights flickered. The city, always loud, now felt like it was holding its breath. And in the silence, he realized something. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about Leon. About the kids inside the center. About every younger boy who might follow his path or die trying. And Jason? Jason wasn't backing down. The war had officially started. But Tyrell had changed. And now, he had something worth protecting. The first strike. Rain poured hard that night, soaking the concrete streets of the Bronx. washing away chalk graffiti, but not the blood from past battles. The city pulsed with tension, the kind that seeps into the cracks of buildings and climbs the bones of people who know when something's about to go wrong. Tyrell couldn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table, phone in one hand, forehead resting on the other. His mother was in the next room, unaware of the storm building outside, and not just from the weather. He had received a coded message from a younger kid on the block earlier that evening. The Queen's crew rolled through. Not for show. Big bags. No faces. It was real. The Lockjaw Syndicate had arrived. Down the block, in a rusted-out sedan, two men sat with tinted windows rolled halfway down. They wore black jackets, gloves, and earpieces. One of them, known on the streets as Cutter, checked the photo of Tyrell on his phone again. Beside it, the name and address of the community center. "We give him fear," Cutter said, loud and public. "No bodies unless they fight." At 9:17 p.m., a Molotov cocktail shattered through the window of the community center's rec room. The fire exploded in a burst of orange and black, licking the walls as alarms screamed into the rainy night. Nearby residents rushed to their windows. Screams echoed. Within minutes, the fire department arrived and doused the flames, but not before the words "Rats burn too" were found scrawled across the side wall in thick red paint. The next morning, the building still smoldered. Charred chairs, broken glass, burnt textbooks, everything that had symbolized hope now looked like a graveyard. Tyrell stood outside with Laura, Leon, and a handful of volunteers. Police tape fluttered in the wind. Leon's voice cracked. "This was our only place, man. The only clean space we had." Laura looked at Tyrell. "They're not just trying to scare you. They're trying to erase you." Tyrell's jaw clenched. "Then we'll build it again. Bigger. And if they burn that down too?" Leon asked. "Then we go where they can't reach," Tyrell replied. "We go into the schools. We go online. We hit the blocks during daylight. We show kids something before they get trapped." For the first time, he wasn't just reacting, he was leading. But that same day, word got back to Jason that the center had been torched and that Tyrell was still standing, not hiding, and speaking louder than before. Jason met with Cutter in an underground parking garage in Queens. "You said fear would do the job," Jason growled. "I gave you noise," Cutter replied. "If you want him gone, for real, it costs more. And you better be sure." Jason stared at the flickering overhead light. A decision was brewing in his gut. One that would change not only Tyrell's future, but his own. That evening, Tyrell called a meeting at an abandoned gym a few blocks away. Dozens of boys showed up, not just from his old crew, but from rival blocks, some still wearing colors. Some were there out of curiosity, others out of fear, but all had come because they'd heard what Tyrell had done. He stood in front of them, with Leon and Laura behind him, and said, "You can stay out there and wait for someone to take your name off the street, or you can walk with me now and take your name back." Silence. Then, one by one, hands began to raise. Some were trembling, but they rose. Outside, in the rain-soaked alley across from the gym, Cutter sat in the back seat of his car, watching through binoculars. He pulled out his phone, dialed Jason. "We've got a problem." "What now?" Jason barked. "Your boy's not just standing tall anymore. He's building an army. Rise and retaliation." The gym smelled like old sweat, peeling paint, and broken dreams. But now it echoed with new voices. Dozens of boys who once only knew the world through fear, violence, and the rules of the street. Tyrell stood in the center, holding a whiteboard marker in one hand and a vision in the other. "This is how we take back our names," he said. "We start with what we know, our blocks. We find the kids coming up behind us, and we pull them in before Jason or anyone else does." Leon passed out flyers, handwritten schedules for new meetups, tutoring sessions, safe zones. They were rough but real. "We ain't teachers," someone in the back called out. "We're survivors," Tyrell replied. "And who better to teach survival than us?" Laughter rippled. Not mocking. Relief. For the first time, these boys weren't following a leader because they feared him. They were following because they believed in him. But not everyone in the room was ready. Mickey stood near the exit, arms crossed. "I still don't trust it," he muttered to Leon. "Jason's not going to let this go. And if Tyrell keeps pushing, people gonna get hurt. Maybe, Leon said. But people are getting hurt anyway. At least now, we're standing for something. Mickey didn't reply. But his silence was different this time. Not doubt, but torn loyalty. Meanwhile, in a warehouse across the river, Jason slammed his fist on a table. You said you could control this, he shouted at Cutter. I said I could end it. But you didn't want blood, remember? Jason paced the room, his face twisting. Every day he saw more of his own people crossing over, some quietly, others defiantly. Tyrell had gone from a problem to a symbol. And in the streets, symbols are dangerous. What do you want to do? Cutter asked coldly. Jason stopped. We find his brother, the little one. He's still in the system, right? Cutter's eyes narrowed. Kid's just a minor. Exactly. That'll shut him up. For a moment, the room went still. Even Cutter hesitated. But then, slowly he nodded. Consider it done. Tyrell came home late that night, soaked from the rain, but smiling. His mother greeted him at the door, holding a towel and a half-worried look. You're starting something good, she said. But good doesn't always mean safe. Tyrell hugged her. I'll protect this. All of it. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. One photo. It was his younger brother, Marcus, sitting on a park bench. Alone. The caption beneath it read, Add. You speak again. He disappear. S. Tyrell's breath caught. His fingers clenched around the phone until his knuckles turned white. He knew what this was. Jason wasn't going after him anymore. He was going after Tyrell's soul. The next morning, the boys met again at the gym. Tyrell didn't speak at first. He simply held up his phone and showed them the photo. Everyone went silent. Then, in a voice that didn't shake, Tyrell said, They're scared. That's why they're doing this. What are we going to do? Leon asked. Tyrell looked around the room. Every pair of eyes was locked on him. Waiting. We protect our people. We don't run. We don't fold. But we do it smart. We find Marcus. We bring him back. And then we take everything they built and we flip it. That night, the city felt colder than usual. Jason had started a fire, but he had underestimated what real leadership could ignite in return. Because Tyrell was no longer just trying to survive. He was preparing for war. The hunt for Marcus. By sunrise, Tyrell was already moving. He didn't sleep. He couldn't. His little brother, Marcus, was out there, maybe alone, maybe worse, and every second mattered. He met Leon at the train station, both boys dressed in black hoodies, their faces grim. We need eyes everywhere, Tyrell said. Street cameras, bus stops, parks. Jason's dumb, but he ain't sloppy. He'll keep Marcus somewhere quiet. And if it's not him, Leon asked, what if the lockjaw guys already moved him? Then we follow the fire trail, Tyrell said, eyes sharp. Everywhere they've been, someone noticed something. We find that someone. They started with the burned-out community center. Tyrell spoke to a janitor who had worked late the night the firebombing happened. The man remembered seeing a black SUV with out-of-state plates, parked across the street for hours. Next stop, a gas station nearby. Leon sweet-talked the tired cashier into letting them peek at the overnight camera logs. There it was, 9:06 p.m. The SUV. A man in a black jacket steps out, looks directly at the camera, and smiles. That's Cutter, Tyrell growled. They took the photo and sent it to Laura. Within minutes, she looped in a friend from the Department of Youth Intervention. The plate was traced, and the SUV had been flagged in Red Hook, Brooklyn 2 nights ago, parked outside a run-down storage facility. That's got to be the place, Leon said. No, Tyrell replied. That's the trap. Jason's smart enough to make us chase the wrong lead. He's playing layers now. Leon cursed. So what then? Tyrell thought for a moment, then pulled out his phone. We play smarter. He called Mickey. The line rang once, twice. What? Mickey answered, cautious. You still in or out? Silence. Depends. You calling me to flip? No, Tyrell said. I'm calling because I know you still got ears in Jason's circle. You know where they'd keep someone quiet, off the grid. More silence. Then Mickey whispered. There's a mechanic shop off Hunts Point. Jason's uncle runs it. Real old school. No cameras, no cops. If I had to stash a kid. Tyrell's heart pounded. I owe you, he said and hung up. That night, Tyrell, Leon, and two others from the crew, Ray and Jules, rolled up to the edge of Hunts Point in an old Honda Civic. No weapons, just phones, flashlights, and willpower. The mechanic shop looked dead. A single bulb flickered over the garage bay. No movement. They slipped in through a broken fence. Tyrell signaled for silence. They crept around back and found a narrow side door cracked open. Inside, the air smelled like oil and rust. A small space heater buzzed in the corner. And then, they heard it. A muffled cough. Tyrell rushed forward, ripped open a curtain, and there, curled in a chair, was Marcus. Alive, tired, scared, but not hurt. He whispered. Tyrell nearly collapsed with relief. He grabbed his brother, pulled him into his chest. You good, lil' man? You good? But before they could move, a voice rang out. Touching reunion. Jason. He stood in the doorway, two men flanking him. One of them Cutter. You made it further than I thought, Jason said. But this ends here. Leon stepped up beside Tyrell. You sure? Because you're outnumbered, bro. Jason laughed. Outnumbered? You got 4 boys and dreams. I've got men who finish what they start. Tyrell gently moved Marcus behind him. Yeah, he said. Then finish it. Before Jason could answer, headlights poured in through the back door. Police. Dozens. Sirens howled to life. Laura had called the cavalry. Jason tried to run, but Cutter hesitated. Too late. Officers swarmed the building. In moments, both were on the ground in cuffs. Tyrell stood over Jason. You came after my blood, he said. That was your last move. Jason didn't reply. His eyes, for the first time, weren't filled with hate, but fear. Later that night, Marcus slept soundly for the first time in days. Tyrell stood outside the apartment, looking up at the stars barely visible above the Bronx skyline. Leon stepped beside him. It's over. Tyrell shook his head. No, it's just started. Because the battle for future wasn't about winning one fight. It was about changing the rules of the game. And Tyrell, he wasn't just playing anymore. He was rewriting the whole thing. The ripple and the storm. A week passed. The news of Jason's arrest and the dramatic rescue of Marcus exploded across local media. Headlines ran in bold across newspapers and social F. Eds. Youth leader foils gang plot. Rescues brother in Bronx raid. From street soldier to community voice, Tyrell Banks are ICs. But for Tyrell, the real story was what happened after the headlines. The movement, once a whisper inside a half-burned gym, was now a growing force. Schools across the Bronx began inviting him to speak. The Second Path program, once barely funded, had tripled in volunteers. Kids from Harlem, Brooklyn, and even Queens started showing up to meetings. What Tyrell had lit was now wildfire. But not everyone saw it as good news. In a high-rise office on the Upper East Side, a man named Roland Vexler watched Tyrell's TV interview in silence. He was in his 60s, suit pristine, with a silver tie clip that glinted like a blade. A former city councilman turned developer, Roland had deep investments in the communities Tyrell was stirring up. His assistant stood nearby, tense. "Did we let it play out?" she asked. Roland sipped his tea slowly. Boys like that, they inspire too quickly. And movements like his, they disrupt business. I think it's time we remind this city who really builds it. He slid a file across the desk. Inside, Tyrell's school records, court appearances, juvenile warnings. "Dig," Roland said. "Deep. And leak it. Quietly." Meanwhile, Tyrell sat in the back room of the new youth center they had secured. A modest building 2 blocks from the old one, donated by a retired teacher who'd heard Tyrell's story and handed over her inheritance. Leon entered, holding a laptop. "Yo," he said, "you went viral. That speech at Bronx Central hit 2 million views. Celebrities reposting. One rapper offered to fund the next 3 centers." Tyrell leaned back, almost in disbelief. "We're being heard." "Yeah," Leon replied. "But that means we're being watched too." He flipped the screen around. An anonymous Twitter account had just posted screenshots, Tyrell's name on an old juvenile arrest sheet. A few choice lines about a shoplifting charge from age 13. Rumors about connections to Jason before their fallout. "They're coming," Leon muttered. "And they're playing nasty." Tyrell stared at the screen. his past laid out like a trap. "We fight truth with truth," he said finally. "I won't run from my story." That night, Tyrell stood in front of a packed auditorium at a Brooklyn youth rally. Instead of speaking from a podium, he walked into the crowd, eyes locked on every kid watching him. "You heard it," he said. "I've been arrested. I've fought. I've stolen. I've lied." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "But I've also changed. And if they think dragging my past out will stop my future, they don't understand what it means to be from here." He held up a photo of Marcus. "I do this so the next generation doesn't have to be saved, because we already built the bridge for them." The auditorium erupted, not with applause, but with unity. Standing ovations. Tears. Raised fists. Roland Vexler watched it live from his office, jaw tight. He just made himself a symbol. "Do we push harder?" his assistant asked. Roland turned to the window, looking out over the city skyline. "No. Now we wait. Someone bigger than me will notice this, and they'll have less patience." And across town, in a federal office overlooking the East River, two men in dark suits reviewed a surveillance file with Tyrell's photo clipped to the front. "This kid's stirring up the whole system," one agent said. "He's not a criminal anymore," the other replied. But when someone this young moves hearts like this, people in power start to get nervous. They stamped the folder. "Subject under observation. Eyes above the street." The city never slept, and now neither did Tyrell. Days had turned into strategy sessions, nights into speeches. He was no longer just a name in the neighborhood. He had become a movement. But that movement was climbing into places the street never taught him about. Boardrooms, press conferences, and political debates. At the new community hub in Mott Haven, Tyrell sat at a circular table surrounded by youth organizers from all 5 boroughs. Some wore suits, others still wore hoodies. But all were watching him. "We've got 25 schools on board," said Sasha, a fierce 20-year-old organizer from Crown Heights. "If we keep growing, we'll have the city by the ears by summer." Leon leaned forward. "And that's when they'll come for real. You saw what they tried with the arrest sheet. Next time, it'll be deeper." Tyrell nodded. "We don't run. We outsmart." But across town, the game was changing faster than they knew. At a private gathering inside the Hamilton Club, a high-end political donor lounge in Midtown Manhattan, Roland Vexler stood at a mahogany bar speaking with a sharply dressed man named Senator Warren Klein, the state's youngest rising political star. "The boy's making waves," Roland said. "Local elections are shifting because of him. School boards are folding. Even police funding is under review." Klein sipped his scotch. "It's just a teenager." "No," Roland said. "It's a symbol. Symbols can't be bought, but they can be broken." Senator Klein smiled, but his eyes turned cold. "I'll take it from here." That same night, Tyrell received a letter slipped under the door of the community center. No stamp, no signature, just 4 typed lines. "You are inspiring the wrong people. The city does not belong to children. Walk away while you still can, or the past will walk tower. Do you?" Tyrell showed it to Laura and Leon. "This isn't from Jason's world," Tyrell said. "This is from the one above it." Laura frowned. "They're watching you, maybe even recording you. If they feel threatened." Leon interrupted. "We go public. We tell them the pressure's coming." "No," Tyrell said. "We don't feed their fear. We feed the truth. Every step we take now, it's got to be cleaner than clean. They want one misstep, one reason to end this." Meanwhile, in a quiet federal monitoring facility in D.C., Tyrell's file had been reckled. Assified, influencer with potential to destabilize youth control networks in high-risk neighborhoods. And beneath that label, surveillance level upgraded. Psychological profile requested. Back in New York, Tyrell climbed the roof of the center alone, gazing over the city. The buildings looked like chess pieces, kings, pawns, bishops, all waiting for the next move. He remembered the first night he fought under a flickering street lamp. The sound of fists, shouts, the smell of sweat and concrete. Back then, power came from fear. Now it came from hope. And he realized something. The people at the top, they weren't scared of gang leaders. They were scared of boys who learned to lead without violence. The forum that broke the city. A week later, the invitation arrived in a crisp envelope. Not a text, not a DM. Office of Public Affairs, NYC. Subject, Civic Youth Reform Forum, televised live on City Channel 9. Insid, it read, you are formally invited to participate in the Civic Youth Forum alongside city leaders, education officials, and Senator Warren Klein. Your voice has become a beacon. Let now be go. Me policy. Tyrell stared at the paper for a long time. His name, Tyrell Banks, was printed right next to the senators. They're putting you on their turf now, Leon said, reading over his shoulder. Let them, Tyrell replied. If we want real change, we have to speak where they can't ignore us. Laura warned, gently, this isn't the gym, Ty. They don't fight fair in suits. They fight with questions that trap you. Cameras that twist your words. Tyrell nodded. Then we fight smarter. The night of the forum, the auditorium at NYU was packed. Hundreds filled the seats, students, journalists, police, donors, and community leaders. A row of cameras lined the back wall, broadcasting citywide. On stage sat 5 panelists, a school superintendent, a police union rep, Senator Warren Klein, Tyrell Banks, a moderator from City News. Tyrell wore no tie, just a clean black hoodie and jeans. His presence alone felt like protest. The moderator cleared his throat and addressed the room. We're here tonight to discuss solutions. Youth violence, school failure, street influence. Each of our panelists brings a different voice to the table. Let's begin. For the first 20 minutes, the discussion was tense but civil. Proposals, talking points, carefully rehearsed answers. Then, the moderator turned to Tyrell. Mr. Banks, there are those who say your movement is reckless, that it's replacing structure with sentiment, that your past disqualifies you from leading anyone. How do you respond? Tyrell leaned forward slowly, eyes scanning the room. I say we tried their structure for decades, and it failed. It put cops in hallways instead of counselors. It funded jails over jobs. It punished 10-year-olds harder than corrupt politicians. And now, they're surprised we want a different way. Murmurs. Some clapped. Others frowned. The moderator continued, Senator Klein, would you like to respond? Klein smiled calmly. Of course. I admire Mr. Banks' passion. But leadership requires more than emotion. It requires accountability. History matters. Mr. Banks, would you be willing to admit here that your former affiliation with gang activity endangered lives? The crowd went quiet. Tyrell paused. A younger version of himself flickered in his mind. The kid on the corner, fists bleeding, heart harder than his knuckles. Then he stood. Yes, I admit it. I was part of the problem, but I chose to change. And I didn't just talk about it. I built something better. He turned to the audience. How many of you know a kid with no father, no money, no safe place to go? That's who I fight for. Not because I'm perfect, but because I'm proof you don't have to be to make a difference. Half the room stood in applause. Senator Klein's smile faded. But then a twist. A producer in the back handed the moderator a last-minute card. He squinted at it, then spoke into his mic. We've just received a question from a city press pool. Mr. Banks, are you aware of recent reports that your community center funding came from a former gang affiliate now under federal investigation? Gasps filled the room. Laura, backstage, froze. Tyrell's face went still. It was a setup, the kind you don't escape clean. He had 2 choices, lie and protect the center, or tell the truth and risk losing it all. Tyrell took a breath. The camera zoomed in. Yes, he said, one of our donors was a former affiliate. He believed in redemption, just like I did. He wanted to help us do right. But if this city only funds programs from saints, then it's never going to save the sinners. Silence. Then a girl in the audience stood. Teenager, maybe 15. My brother's alive because of Tyrell's center, she said. He was about to get pulled into the streets. Now he's tutoring kids. Who else up there can say they did that? Others stood. Then dozens. Then the whole auditorium. The crowd wasn't following politics. They were following truth. Senator Klein sat still, jaw tight. He had lost control of the stage and the narrative. That night, Tyrell's phone blew up. Text messages, voicemails, media requests. But one call stood out. Unknown number. He picked up. A slow, cold VO. Ice answered. You embarrassed the wrong people tonight, Mr. Banks.